December 2013 was my first Christmas as a missionary for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. At that time, I wrote a piece in my journal that I believe has been a central theme of my own spirituality and psychological development ever since. I'll spare you the original text, but it went something like this. In writing, I wondered at a God who could do nearly anything: split the Red Sea, overcome despotic Pharaoh, lead Israel in successive victories against their enemies. But this great God was also fairly remote, and I felt like I was always cleaning up his theological messes. The Hebrew Bible is suffused with goodness, but it was also written millennia ago by a people who had a different ethics than our own on war, tribal conflict, and other subjects. And it showed in their conception of God, which they laid down in the texts they left behind. Being close to Christmas, I tried to ground my thoughts in Jesus, to see how he might change my understanding of God. So I found myself imagining a classic manger, in the middle of the night, and the sacred family sleeping in the cold, exposed, surrounded by animals. I imagined myself entering that scene, my dress shoes sinking into the mud and shit, my nostrils immediately assaulted by the stench of an animal's home, even if domesticated, and my bones ached from the cold of the night. I imagined a fire to warm the young mother, the old surrogate father, and their newborn baby, a fire that was dying. So I slogged through the waste, stopped over the dying flames, and wondered what I could do to keep this infant warm. I reached into my pockets and found all the notes I had ever taken: theology, history, cultural and religious criticism, the lot. And I tossed them into the fire, to keep it going for the infant and his parents. It's a bit of fiction, of course, but it's a scene I've revisited a number of times since then. I believe the unconscious mind expresses itself through symbols and narratives, and were one to attempt to psychoanalyze me, they would inevitably find themselves in that same manger, watching me burn my own writing to warm a baby born to nobody parents from a backwater village that barely merited a name. The meaning I took away from this fantasy and journal entry is something like this. The manger is myself, my heart or mind, my soul if you prefer. The Christ is that same mind Paul said was in Jesus, and which he implores Jesus' followers to have as well in Philippians 2:5. And those notes were all my attempts to warm and preserve that Christ in myself. Those who know me well know I read and write constantly, and my interests and views change, or hopefully develop. In that constant flow of ideas, however, my worldview is like a river I can never step into twice. But there seems to be something at the center of it all too, which I feel I see in Jesus, at least in this journal entry, if not maybe a more universal Christ, though that may also just be another note. And the constant reading and writing, the perpetual note-taking, shall we say, has always been in service to that symbolic something in me, infantile or perhaps nascent though it may be. It's what I tried to awaken in others as a missionary as well, though traditional means of proselytizing were never that helpful in my view. They felt like marketing and more note-taking when I believed that, for as bad as I was at it, notes were taken in order to be burned. I wanted to fan people's flames and see what it called up from within them, and I wanted to do the same for myself, though I was never terribly good at it, preferring my precious notes to the privilege of burning them, of warming and caring for the Christ inside. The trouble is, I'm not even sure what the Christ in that journal entry ultimately means. I could say it's the ultimate good in us all, but that's not at all self-explanatory. What is good, let alone the ultimate good? And therefore more notes. I could say it's that part of us which is of maximal value, but that's about as helpful as ultimate good. The best I can do, I think, without risking too many more notes, is to say that it's that deep down bit of us which we've yet to meet, a bit I presume we all share, a layer of the self we don't typically experience, but which sustains us in some significant way. Perhaps it's the part of us already in on it, on the mysteries of life, the part of us that feels entirely at home in our lives and circumstances, the part of us that wants and has wanted to be who we are, where we are, when we are, and with whomever we may be, since the foundations of the world, whatever that even means. Meister Eckhart wrote that there's a part of your soul that's never been wounded before. Maybe that's it. In any event, my own view of the world seems terribly convoluted at times. I read widely, and having likely far too much time on my hands, I think endlessly about what I take in, comparing it to my own experiences and understanding. But it's all just notes, really, all as good as kindling, so to speak. And they'll constantly change, as they always have, but they have purpose, really. I think I can even inch a bit closer to what it is I'm trying to warm with that note-fueled fire inside. The through line of my own spirituality, if such it can be called, is actually quite simple. It's to remember that I'm overcomplicating things, to stop knotting things up in my own head, and instead pay attention to what's always already sitting right under my nose. There's an absolute horizon to my thoughts, feelings, opinions, ideas, and what's beyond that horizon is what matters. So I take notes to see where my mind is at, and I burn them to get beyond that, to whatever it is I see in Christ. In mid-2014, after my grandfather had passed away, I wrote this poem. All my life I lived as if the world was loud. One day I shouted myself hoarse and found the world was actually quiet. Excited, I tried to tell others the world was quiet, but I couldn't do it without shouting. Fan your flames, and fan others' flames as well, and see what comes of it. It could be better than what you've been doing so far.